Chapter 51 Kato Jnin has the capital of Hokage. Kato Dan is naturally very concerned about being able to enter the Longming realm today. As the fourth summoning holy land that has been recognized by the Konoha executives and the major ninjas, if he can sign the summoning contract to the Longming realm, then he, the Kato family, will benefit a lot in the future. However, Ryu Fujikrai naturally wouldn't let Kato Dan sign the contract so easily, a dying person destined to be used up by him and then thrown away. Let this kind of person write his name on the summoning scroll of the Ryuto family, which will somewhat make Ryu Fujikrai feel a little unlucky. Jnin Kato, although my strength is not as good as yours, but I want to emphasize it again now. After you enter, you have to listen to me. Once you make up your own mind and something goes wrong and you die in Longming realm, it's no fault of me. This time we are collecting raw materials from the Longming realm to make healing medicine and military food pills for the village, so don't cause trouble. In the breeding farm in the dead forest behind the Dragon and Vine tribe, Ryu Fujikrai led his subordinate Yoshio Otsuka and more than a dozen warriors of Knin combat level, and the preparations were completed. At this moment Kato Dan heard Ryu Fujikrai's solemn words, and saw those huge herbivorous dragons at the bottom of the so-called Longming realm in the farm in front of him, and nodded solemnly. Don't worry, Patriarch Longteng, I'm Konoha Jnin, and I understand the basic principles of ninjas. Ryu Fujikrai sneered in his heart. That's good. Put a hand directly on one of Kato Dan's arms, and with a bang, white smoke exploded. Advertisement Kato Dan only felt the world spinning for a while, and then a burst of strange-smelling air was introduced into his stomach. Looking at the lush greenery in front of him, Kato Dan couldn't help showing surprise at the moment. It was his first time entering the summoning world. However, Ryu Fujikrai did not intend to let the other party take a good look around here, and directly took the manpower and rushed towards the place where small monsters such as herbivorous dragons and crested dragons were hunted. Jnin Kato, have you seen those monsters? Your spiritualization technique attacks silently. In order not to cause too much noise and attract large monsters, please come and shoot. Let's hurry up and kill them, those monsters. We will summon things back to Konoha. The village is going to send reinforcements these days. We must prepare the first batch of honey medicine and military food pills as much as possible before the army departs. Please act quickly. Kato Dan didn't expect that Ryu Fujikrai came up to let him make a move. He was about to say something, but he was forced by Ryu Fujikrai's Konoha righteousness and could only open his mouth and nodded in agreement. Then please ask Patriarch Longteng to help me take care of my body. Seeing Ryu Fujikrai nodding his head in agreement, the latter immediately formed a seal quickly, and as a burst of light emanated from Kato Dan's body, the latter's body lay straight on the ground. Sure. Ryu Fujikrai stared at Kato Dan's spirit body leaving his body, and then flew towards a nearby herbivorous dragon. Unable to see the specific attack method, Ryu Fujikrai could only vaguely see a spirit body of Kato Dan flashing past, getting into the body of the herbivorous dragon, and after a few breaths, the herbivorous dragon slowly crawled on the ground. Advertisement Kato Dan's spirit body emerged from the herbivorous dragon's corpse, wiped off the sweat on his forehead, nodded in the direction of Ryu Fujikrai and the others, and flew towards the other herbivorous dragons around go. After several consecutive attacks, Kato Dan's spiritual body returned to his body. Opening his eyes, Kato Dan, whose face was slightly pale, smiled wryly. Patriarch Longteng, the summoning beasts of the Longming realm, is really not simple. After I entered their body, I was strongly blocked. Please allow me to rest. The shock in Ryu Fujikrai's eyes flashed away. At this moment, by the stream, more than a dozen herbivorous dragons were quietly crawling there, without any signs of fighting or being disturbed. However, they have all been reduced to corpses. He winked at Otsuka Yoshio and his warriors, and the latter immediately led the crowd to summon the corpses of these herbivorous dragons back to the village. Ryu Fujikrai looked at Kato Dan, who had just taken Bingliang 1 and was recovering, with admiration written all over his face. Jnin Kato's spiritualization technique is really hard to guard against. Sure enough, it is a very wise decision to let you join our team. We come to hunt on weekdays. If we want to keep so many prey at once, let alone use hundreds of people. Konoha is really lucky to have a talent like Kato Jnin in the village. Kato Jnin, as long as you keep working hard in the future, I think. Advertisement Kato Jnin, you have the capital of Hokage. Kato Dan originally had a somewhat unnatural face, but after hearing such a compliment from Ryu Fujikrai, especially the last sentence saying that he has the talent of Hokage, it directly spoke to his heart. Seeing Lian waving his hands and saying humble words, but the curvature of the corner of his mouth is Kato Dan who has betrayed his heart, Ryu Fujikrai sneered in his heart. Seeing that Kato Dan is so humble on the surface, his expression is straightforward. It seems to be a direct theory. Jnin Kato, you are being modest. What about your family background? Now my teacher, the Sarutabi family was not a big family back then. But Mr. Sarutabi has become third Hokage now. Mr. Sarutabi learned from Master second generation. But Kato Jnin, think about you, aren't you also very proficient in cultivating the spirit technique invented by second generation? Excuse me, besides you, is there anyone else in the village who has practiced this secret technique? To tell you the truth, when I applied to learn 8 inner gates with teacher Sarutabi some time ago, I also glanced at spiritualization technique. But there are too many puzzles. The two chatted and chatted directly. The smiles on the faces of the elder and the younger at the moment seemed like close friends who hadn't seen each other for many years. Soon, Otsuka Yoshio and the others completed the work of transporting the herbivorous dragons. Seeing this, they had a very happy chat with Ryu Fujikrai, and even revealed some spiritual techniques of Kato Dan, who also know more small talk. Without knowing it, they were led by Ryu Fujikrai towards places they had never explored before. Chapter 52 Surprise. The Magnetic Jagera Combination. Go ahead. Or. When the last Crestosaurus screamed and fell on the ground without life, the body of Kato Dan, who was protected by them beside Ryu Fujikrai, suddenly moved. As soon as Kato Dan's spiritual body returned to his physical body, his first reaction was to eat Bingliang pills. And his face was even paler than before, and he was still panting slightly. Dragon, Patriarch Longteng, please let me rest. Ryu Fujikrai has already been happy in his heart. To be honest, if this guy doesn't covet the Tsunade he has already taken a fancy to, it would be good for him to be included in the Ryuto family. In the future, as a vassal of the Ryuto family, he will focus on training him as a worker. With this guy, Ryu Fujikrai's efficiency is simply too fast. This is already the 5th batch since they came in, whether it is herbivorous dragon or crown dragon. Just like Ryu Fujikrai said, it is the existence of the bottom dragons in this world, and it is not too easy to find them. Take out half of the honey medicine and military food pills needed for the Konoha army to dispatch, and the remaining Ryu Fujikrai can be reserved for the younger generations in their own dojo. Kato Jnin don't need to worry, Captain Hatake and his team are so strong in combat, and Tsunagakure has suffered such a big blow. In these few days, there will be no major problems on the front line. Let's take our time. Advertisement. Kato Dan, who just ate a few Bingliang pills and was still panting. He didn't know why, but he always felt that the young patriarch Longteng in front of him seemed to let him have a good rest, but every word he said seemed to remind him. Don't King paralyze like a dead pig, Laos's Bingliang pills don't support idlers. Seeing that Kato Dan still didn't stand up and continue to explore even though he said so, Ryu Fujikrai understood that the other party had really reached the limit, and if he activated the spirit technique, it would probably hurt the spirit body. Ryu Fujikrai also didn't urge overtly or secretly. Just when Kato Dan breathed a sigh of relief, Ryu Fujikrai's voice sounded again. Hey! Kato-jnin, you said before that the key point of the spiritualization technique is to allow the spirit body to store a part of the chakra extracted from the physical body, but how does this spirit body carry these chakra? Kato Dan. He finally found out that the Dragon and Vine Patriarch really didn't want him to stop for a while, even if he was recovering chakra at this moment, his mind couldn't be idle. Along the way, the other party has taken this opportunity to ask him a lot of questions about the spiritualization technique. The questions have been superficial at the beginning, but have gradually touched on the fundamentals of his life. Thinking of Ryu Fujikrai's intentional or unintentional mention along the way, the Ryuto family is willing to support a Hokage who is good for them to succeed the next Hokage, and other words. In the end Kato Dan still gritted his teeth, and it will involve the core of spiritualization technique insights into the problem, speak out. Finally, after everyone had gone deep into the ancient tree forest for an unknown period of time, seeing that the night of the summoning world had fallen, the howls of various beasts in the forest became more and more frequent. Kato Dan finally couldn't bear to ask. Advertisement. Patriarch Longteng, we must have hunted a lot of prey today, right? Ryu Fujikrai thought about it for a while, and was secretly disappointed. Kato Dan is really tough, with such a wide range of activities, he didn't even encounter a large monster. On the surface, he nodded, indeed, with Kato-jnin here this time, we have gained a lot. Since this is the case, we will take this batch of herbivorous dragons back and rest here today. Hearing this, Kato Dan was also unavoidably relieved. However, when everyone was cleaning up the scene, there was a sudden violent ground vibration, and then they didn't give them a chance to react. A huge dark golden figure suddenly swooped down from the tree with twisted roots hundreds of meters high, as if falling from the sky. Boom! The violent vibration seemed to activate a B-level Earth-style ninjutsu, and the sudden change caused everyone's complexion to change drastically. Ryu Fujikrai's complexion also changed wildly, and he shouted anxiously at Kato Dan, who was the closest to the Jagras that fell from the sky. Kato-jnin, be careful. This monster has jnin strength. Rough skin and thick body. Kato Dan just took out a kunai, and his face changed when he heard Ryu Fujikrai's words, but at this moment, the Jagera, which landed heavily, was already facing him, and opened its mouth fiercely. The huge roar caused Kato Dan to be thrown out of the formation, and while his body was churning, his hearing was temporarily deaf. Advertisement. Fortunately, Jnin's instinct allowed him to quickly get up on the spot. However, he saw the distance, looked behind him in shock, and gesticulated wildly at him, as if he was still shouting something. Ryu Fujikrai slightly turned around. Unexpectedly, at some point, from among the trees on one side, a strange monster with a height of 8 or 9 meters came out again. That pair of wild eyes just happened to look at him, the bloody mouth opened wide, and a pungent sulfur breath rushed towards his face along with the strong flame, making Kato Dan instantly despair. I'm going to be a Hokage, so I'm going to die here today. The flames rolled towards his face, and the heat wave made Kato Dan instantly aware of the horror of the giant beast in front of him, but he never expected that this kind of monster was already terrifying in size. Can still cast fire style. Kato Jnin, be careful. A voice came when Kato Dan was already desperate, and then he suddenly felt himself being pushed by a huge force. While tumbling, flames exploded behind him. When Kato Dan came back to his senses, he saw that Ryu Fujikai had pulled out the short sword from his waist at this moment, facing away from him and facing the two giant beasts. This is a savage dragon. Not only does it have a strong bite force and aggressiveness, but it can also breathe flames. Chapter 53 Kato Jnin, please show the awareness of the will of fire. Ryu Fujikai turned his back to Kato Dan, looking at the two big guys in front of him, but his eyes were full of ecstasy. He was about to give up at first, but at this time he was given such a double yolk egg, how could this make him unhappy? Hurry up and evacuate with your things, the village needs these things, these two guys will be handed over to me and Kato Jnin. Ryu Fujikai looked surprised in the distance, but they shouted at Otsuka Yoshio and the others rushing towards them, and at the same time secretly winked at the leader Otsuka Yoshio. The latter's face immediately showed grief and indignation very cooperatively. Master Patriarch, you should retreat. Let's stop it. Kato Dan, who got up next to Ryu Fujikai, looked at the two terrifying monsters looking at them at the moment, swallowed a mouthful of saliva, and also wanted to retreat. His current situation is not beautiful, he was already a bit overdrawn, just now he faced the sonic roar of the Javs, and now his head seemed to be about to explode. However, Ryu Fujikai's righteous words made him want to retreat, and he couldn't say anything. Don't waste my time. These supplies are urgently needed by the village, and if these two guys are not dealt with, there will be no herbivorous dragons in this area, and our troubles will be even greater in the future. Quickly withdraw. Otsuka Yoshio and the others finally ran towards the prey in the distance with grief and anger, and disappeared into the ancient tree forest with a bang. And only Ryu Fujikai and Kato Dan were left on the scene. In front of them, the two large monsters that were guaranteed to bite in the game, the Jagera and the Magnathus, looked at the two of them coldly. Advertisement. Ryu Fujikai took a deep breath, looked at the Jagera who he was more confident in, and said solemnly to Kato Dan beside him. Jnin Kato, we have to deal with them today. I'll deal with this. Is it okay to hand over the fire-breathing one to you? Kato Dan looked at the Magnathosaurus, which caused the ground to vibrate even if he took a step in front of him, swallowed a mouthful of saliva, and a smile that was uglier than crying appeared on his face. Dragon, Patriarch of the Dragon Vine, can't we wait until Master Hokage comes to support us? Ryu Fujikai snorted coldly, except for me, the rest of the family can't bring people into Longming Realm at all. If you want to ask the teacher for help, at least I need to leave. Can you handle it alone here? Seeing that Kato Dan was still hesitating, Ryu Fujikai sneered viciously in his heart. On the surface, he looks like he hates iron but not steel. Kato Jnin. As a Konoha ninja, don't you even have the courage to face a strong enemy? How can you sit in Hokage's position in the future? How can you carry the entire Konoha? The heroic language seemed to touch Kato Dan's heart, and Ryu Fujikai's next words made Ryu Fujikai's originally uneasy heart suddenly settle down, and his fighting spirit burst into flames. Kato Jnin, if we work together to get through this hurdle today, I assure you on the honor of the Dragon Tang family, I will allow you to sign your name on the summoning scroll of the Dragon Cry world. As soon as these words came out, Kato Dan's eyes finally showed a fiery color that could not be concealed. Ryu Fujikrai tilted his head slightly and said solemnly, Kato Chunin, now please show the will of fire that Hokage should have. Kato Dan took a deep breath, his eyes finally became sharper, and he nodded heavily. Advertisement Patriarch Longteng, please rest assured. As a ninja of Konoha, I have already made up my mind to sacrifice for the village. If these two guys are rough-skinned and thick-skinned, use ordinary ninjutsu and body skills to deal with them. With the two of us there is a huge disparity in human strength. Kato Dan turned his head and stared deeply at Ryu Fujikrai. Patriarch Longteng, I am going to use the spirit technique again. Ryu Fujikrai thought, Laozi is waiting for your words. He nodded without hesitation. I will protect your body. Kato Dan nodded without further delay, quickly formed a seal in his hand, and just as the savage dragon was rushing towards this side, the spirit body instantly separated from the body, and Ryu Fujikrai immediately held the opponent's body with one hand. Catch! With a flash of figure, he had already dodged the attack of the Magnathus, and Shunpo stepped swiftly under his feet, entangled the javs, and shouted, Kato Chunin, leave this to me, and you will deal with the Magnathosaurus with all your might. No need for Ryu Fujikrai to say, just after the spirit body left the body, Kato Dan rushed towards the body of the savage dragon, and the dense light of the spirit body disappeared on the surface of the savage dragon's body in a blink of an eye. The magnethic dragon, which was still fierce at first, suddenly started to twitch in the next second. Amidst the painful roar, it bumped east and west, knocking down trees one after another. Shunpo under Ryu Fujikrai's feet stepped quickly, and the short sword in his hand from time to time still left a series of knife marks on the body of the big javelin. Obviously he can quickly deal with the opponent, just paddling on the side. Ho 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 ho! The painful and angry roar of the Magnathus echoed in the woods. Ryu Fujikrai watched this scene seriously, and his understanding of the spiritualization technique became more and more clear in his heart. Spiritualization technique allows the soul to leave the body for a short time, enter the body of the victim, control their body, or directly collapse the enemy to death in their spiritual world. Advertisement At least Ryu Fujikrai has no way to defend against this kind of technique at the moment, but looking at the savage-jawed dragons that have been living and struggling fiercely since Kato Dan entered for a long time, the spiritual strength of these creatures in the Longming world should be somewhat stronger than ordinary ninjas in the ninja world. However, as time went by, the struggle of the savage dragon became stronger and stronger, and Ryu Fujikrai clearly felt that Kato Dan's physical aura seemed to be weakening. Obviously, that guy Kato Dan is already desperate at the moment. I don't know how long it took, and amidst the painful roar of the savage dragon, Kato Dan suddenly won the control of some bodies, controlled the body of the savage dragon, and suddenly mounted it on the sharp mountain wall beside it. The huge force instantly caused a hideous wound on the Manjaw dragon. The dense light broke away from the body of the savage dragon, and the voice of Kato Dan, who was obviously much weaker, came. Patriarch Longteng, let's solve this first, find out its weakness, and kill it with one blow. Ryu Fujikrai didn't talk nonsense, and in an instant, he carried Kato Dan's body and disappeared in place, leaving only the big Jagras with a bite in the air, standing still in anger. But when Ryu Fujikrai reappeared the next moment, he had already arrived under the body of the savage dragon, and the icy cold light of the gold thief pierced out from his hand. Pseudo-dragon flow times thieves' shadow strike. With Chakra's full force and Kato Dan's desperate restraint, the knife instantly penetrated the head of the savage-jawed dragon. The latter's body trembled, and with a cry of grief, he fell directly to the ground. Ecstasy flickered in Ryu Fujikai's eyes. Man-jaw dragon. I don't know what kind of changes and improvements the body material of the Magnethosaurus can bring to him. Chapter 54 Katojnin. Your daughter, I raised her with a sound of boom. The huge body of the magnethic dragon fell to the ground with a bang, causing the ground to shake for a while, and when it hit the ground, sparks burst out from its bloody mouth, which was huge enough to swallow 3 or 4 people at the same time. Kato Dan's spirit body, which was obviously much weaker, immediately broke away from the body of the savage dragon, and immediately turned around and rushed towards the flying dragon. A weak voice reached Ryu Fujikai's ears. Patriarch Longteng. I can't last long. Ryu Fujikai didn't talk nonsense, even as before. The golden thief's cold light flashed in his hand, and a knife accurately pierced the big Yava's eyeball and directly into its head. Ho 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 ho. The severe pain caused Jagera to struggle heartrendingly, but under Kato Dan's almost crazy control, the latter could only twitch on the spot for a while, and finally fell heavily on the ground. At this point, the 2 large monsters that rushed out suddenly received the lunchbox. But Kato Dan's spirit body was also coming out of the body of Javsaurus at this moment, weak like a leaf falling in the air. Longteng. Patriarch, please give me my body. Ryu Fujikai nodded immediately and said without Kato Dan's reminder. Advertisement, you don't need to move, I'll move your body over there, ha ha ha. From today onwards, you'll be Konoha's hero. Kato Dan's spiritual body slowly fell towards the ground as if weightless. Compared with the first time, the light was already weaker by many times. I thought that after today, I am afraid that I will have to cultivate for a long time. However, after hearing Ryu Fujikai's words, Kato Dan still couldn't help showing a weak smile at the corner of his mouth. Although it was a battle that took place in Longming Realm, it did help the village and collected enough materials. In addition, Patriarch Longteng agreed to allow me to sign the summoning contract of Longming Realm. My future status in the village can also be guaranteed. Taken to the next level. Kato Dan thought like this, however, the next moment, he seemed to perceive something incredible. The spirit body of Kato Dan, who was weak and almost closed his eyes, suddenly widened his eyes, turned his head to look, and was shocked to see Ryu Fujikai, who was walking towards him with his body on his back. Not only did he not quickly carry his body over as he had imagined, but he suddenly swung the short sword that was still mixed with dragon blood in his hand. The blade, which was so sharp that it could penetrate even dragon scales, did not hesitate at all, and chopped off the head of Kato Dan's body with his eyes closed. The chubby head and the headless corpse spattered with blood, and as the blood gushed out, Kato Dan also saw Ryu Fujikai's cold eyes full of malice and strangeness at this moment. The head was flying in the air, and Kato Dan was completely stunned by the scene in front of him. He was already weak. At this moment he couldn't understand at all why he used his spiritualization technique tirelessly along the way to help the Longteng family. When faced with Ryu Fujikai's problems in spiritualization technique, he taught him everything. Obviously the other party is also very satisfied with himself, and said that he will support him to become Hokage. Advertisement. Why? Kato Dan's spirit body trembled violently, his eyes widened, and he couldn't figure it out. His unrepentant head just rolled beside his spirit body at this moment. The fear of death, and the anger of being betrayed made him almost crazy at this moment. However, the spirit body, which has really reached its limit, doesn't even have the strength to drive it. At the same time, he could sense that his spirit body itself was rapidly collapsing. Ryu Fujikrai casually swung the bloodline off the blade of the golden thief in his hand, and put the knife back into its sheath without haste. Why? You're asking, why did I chop off the head of our Hokage-talented Kaito Chunin? Ryu Fujikrai asked with a sneer. The viciousness in his eyes made the latter tremble. To be honest, Kaito Chunin, the value you have shown along the way really makes me very satisfied. If there is no reason why you must be killed, as long as you are willing to work for my Longteng family and support you in the future, Hokage not impossible pity. Ryu Fujikrai shook his head, but then he seemed to think of something, and said with a gentle comforting smile on his face. But don't worry, I told you before that you will become Konoha's hero, this is absolutely true. Next, you will die in the mouth of this terrifying savage-jawed dragon because you performed a mission in the Longming realm of my Dragon Vine family to protect the owner of the Dragon Vine family. Your body was destroyed by fire style, and you died unfortunately. Out of guilt, the head of the Longteng family will give you a grand burial in the best cemetery in Konoha, and will also publicize how heroic our Kaito Chunin is in fighting monsters. Kaito Dan looked at Ryu Fujikrai in disbelief. He was clearly a boy, but it was the first time he saw the malicious look in his eyes at this moment. Advertisement. Ryu Fujikrai walked slowly to the corpse of the great Jagras, and at the same time when he formed a seal in his hands, the corpse of the great Jagras disappeared in a puff of white smoke. Kaito Dan's spirit body tried hard to move, but it couldn't do it at all. With his physical body and head chopped off, he must die at this moment. Why did you kill me? We should have no hatred. Ryu Fujikrai sneered, jumped onto the corpse of the savage-jawed dragon, looked down at the almost transparent Kaito Dan on the ground, and the smile on his face quickly cooled down. It's like watching an ant that can be crushed to death at will, said faintly. Hate is not counted, it's just because of your overreaching, you coveted a woman you shouldn't have coveted. Seeing Kaito Dan's wide-eyed expression, obviously thinking of something, the corners of Ryu Fujikrai's mouth twitched slightly. So, goodbye, Hero Konoha, Kaito Chunin, I heard you have a pretty niece, right? Rest assured. Under Kaito Dan's almost crazy stare, a burst of white smoke exploded suddenly. My daughter, I will support her. Chapter 55. Stealing Tsunad's personal maid, the dragon jade of the man-jawed dragon, that is to say, Kaito Chunin was buried in Longming realm to protect you. No bones left. Why didn't you reverse summoning in advance? Sarutabi Hiruzen, smoking a cigarette, looked around the two huge corpses in the open space, and asked Ryu Fujikrai, who bowed in front of him with a guilty expression. The latter nodded and gritted his teeth. The nails on the fingers of both hands had been embedded in the flesh of his palms due to the force. Choking with shame, he said, "It's all my fault, because Kaito Chunin said that he has no problem, and I also thought that I could collect enough prey raw materials at one time, so I agreed to go deeper. As a result, when we were hunting the last batch of prey and were about to return, we suddenly encountered these two monsters. Chunin Kaito and I covered others to bring things out, but we didn't have time to prepare for the reverse summoning technique, and we had to deal with it in a hurry. Kaito Chunin tried his best to use the spirit technique, but he could barely entangle one of them. Later, I went up to help, but in the end, Kaito Chunin's body was destroyed by another monster." Listening to Ryu Fujikrai's narration, in addition to Sarutabi Hiruzen, there were also characters like Shimura Dan's present, although after their observation, the two monsters in front of them were indeed terrifying and had the possibility of killing Kaito Dan. But for some reason, there was a deep suspicion in the hearts of both of them. Shimura Dans took a deep look at Ryu Fujikrai, who had a sad and guilty expression, squinted his eyes, suddenly seemed to think of something, and said to Sarutabi Hiruzen beside him. Hiruzen, I think there are many doubts in this matter. I think it's better for me to bring the corpses of these two summoning beasts back to the root base. I think I can find something from these two corpses. Advertisement. Hearing this, Sarutabi Hiruzen also pondered, but the sad expression on Ryu Fujikrai's face suddenly froze, and then slowly raised his head. Looking at Shimura Dans with deep eyes, I'm telling the truth, and everything is here. Kato Jnin died in the line of duty. You are so unwilling to give up and want to find something. It is against my Dragon Teng family. Dissatisfied? Or, are you going to take these two dragon corpses? Shimura Dan's face suddenly darkened. If there is no problem, then why are you stopping me now? I think Master Shimura has a secret affair with your old mother. If that's the case, can I also invite your mother to come to my Dragon Vine clan and cooperate with the investigation? If Master Shimura disagrees, then you have a guilty conscience, you. Listening to Ryu Fujikrai's extremely vulgar words, Shimura Dans couldn't help but have a flash of murderous intent in his eyes at this moment. However, Ryu Fujikrai is not a guy at all. Now Konoha's situation is more troublesome than when he first came to the village, and Konoha's senior management is even less likely to move him at this time. I saw him turn his head to look at Third Hokage. Teacher, the sacrifice of Kato Jnin in Longming Realm, although it was a sacrifice for the public, but after all, it was also to save me during the period. My Longteng family is willing to undertake the aftermath of this incident. Jnin Kato talked with me. He also has a niece. If possible, my Longteng family is willing to treat her as a relative, raise and nurture her. Also, please allow me, the Ryuto family, to erect a statue for Kato Jnin's cemetery. Sarutabi Hiruzen silently looked in front of him with a sincere face. He was really a Ryu Fujikrai who sincerely assumed his responsibility. He was also an old man who had worked in the ninja world for decades. Advertisement. How can some doubts not be seen? However, according to Anbu's investigation, Ryu Fujikrai had no contact with Kato Dan at all before, and the two did not have any enmity. In addition, Ryu Fujikrai's current status in the village and his sincere attitude. Third generation took a deep look at his fourth disciple, who didn't seem to be worry-free, and sighed. The reinforcements sent by the village to the front line are about to start soon, and Longteng Pharmaceutical should act as soon as possible. As he said that, he turned his head and walked towards the outside of the Dragon and Vine clan. Shimura Dans glanced at the two giant beast corpses beside Ryu Fujikrai with reluctance. After all, he snorted coldly and followed Sarutabi Hiruzen to leave. In this way, under the deliberate publicity of Ryu Fujikrai and Konoha's high-level officials, Kato Dan's death was directly turned into an accident in the mission, and Ryu Fujikrai was not embarrassed at all, and directly made Kato Dan into a great ninja with the will of fire. At night, in the core area of the Dragon Vine clan, the warriors of the family were dividing up and processing the dragon corpses brought back today, among which were the Magnethosaurus and Jaguarosaurus that definitely belonged to the patriarch Ryu Fujikrai. But at this moment, a samurai brought in a bewildered black-haired girl, who was timid with red eyes. And in the hands of the samurai, there is still a small burden at the moment. My lord, Kato Jnin doesn't have anything particularly important at home, except for this little girl's stuff, all of which I brought here. Ryu Fujikrai nodded, and after the samurai went out, Ryu Fujikrai finally looked at the little girl in front of him with an apologetic expression. I heard from Katojnin that your name is Shitsune. Regarding the cause of your uncle's death, I won't lie to you. He did die on those summoning monsters because he saved me. Even if you hate me, I won't complain about this matter, but I still have to admit it. Advertisement: your uncle, Katojnin, is indeed a respectable, excellent Konoha. At this time, Shitsune's age is not much different from that of Ryu Fujikrai, just a little younger, and he doesn't look like the elite medical ninja who followed Tsunade in the original plot. However, the calmness exuded already has the shadow of Shitsune, the future medical ninja. Even though his face was full of confusion and sadness at this moment, Shitsune still clenched his fists and held back tears. I don't blame you for this matter. Uncle has said more than once that the profession of ninja is accompanied by death and danger, and being able to sacrifice for the village is also a happy ending for ninja. Ryu Fujikrai bowed slightly, still apologetic on his face, but sneered in his heart. Kato Dan was ready to die as a ninja, but he never thought that he would die under the backstab of his companion. The reason for his death was simply because he showed some covetousness towards Tsunade. Ryu Fujikrai took a deep breath and arranged Shitsune in the side room of his residence. In his words, Kato Dan died because of him, and he will assume the responsibility of taking care of Shitsune from now on. In the future, Shitsune can take care of his daily life, and he will provide her with resources, teach her how to practice, and provide her with a stable environment. As night fell, the news of Kato Dan's death had spread in Konoha village, and the date of the funeral had been confirmed, but Ryu Fujikrai was sitting in his room at the moment. In his hand is a bright red bead. The Dragon Jade of the Magnific Dragon. Chapter 56: The usage of attribute Dragon Jade, the limit of awakening blood successor. Ryu Fujikrai looked at the Dragon Jade in his hand. The types of Dragon Jade in Monster Hunter World can actually be divided into Dragon Jade and Dragon Jade of a certain dragon. The former, like the one that Ryu Fujikrai obtained from the first Jagera, became one of the main materials for forging the Waist Saber Golden Thief. The latter is also the Dragon Jade in Ryu Fujikrai's hands at the moment, which is obviously not simple. Just now, Ryu Fujikrai has been carving it with a knife for a while, just like the previous Dragon Jade. Unlike ordinary Dragon Jade that can be processed, Ryu Fujikrai found that the bright red in his hand seems to have flames burning inside. The Dragon Jade is indestructible. Even the Golden Thief of the Kusanagi sword, which he could easily pierce through the dragon scale armor, was unable to leave even the slightest trace. Hey, it would be great to have the system cheats of the protagonists of those novels at this time. No matter how bad it is, the artificial super-intelligent brain is also good, and detailed information on anything can be displayed with a scan. Ryu Fujikrai shook his head in distress. Owning the entire monster hunting world as a cheat is actually very powerful, but when thinking about the things about monster hunting world, Ryu Fujikrai has a headache for a while. After thinking hard for a long time, looking at the beautiful savage-jawed Dragon Jade in his hand, he suddenly thought of something, took a deep breath, gritted his teeth and carefully took the Dragon Jade into his mouth. After waiting for a long time, Ryu Fujikrai smiled wryly, because he was teased by his own head that had been poisoned by martial arts novels. However, just when he was about to spit out the Dragon Jade in his mouth, he suddenly felt a burning sensation in his mouth, and before Ryu Fujikrai could react, he just felt that the originally hard Dragon Jade in his mouth turned into jelly general fluid. The next moment, without him swallowing, it was directly drawn into his esophagus. Advertisement: at this moment, Ryu Fujikrai was frightened by the sudden change, and he wished to shave his ears on the spot. However, as the dragon jade entered his body, Ryu Fujikrai felt intense burning sensations from his body. From the stomach, to the internal organs, then the bones and meridians, and finally even the muscles seemed to be burning. The severe pain made Ryu Fujikrai want to yell, but as a flame spewed out of his mouth, Ryu Fujikrai was stunned. The flames started to blaze on the floor, and the sudden movement finally attracted Shitsune, who had just settled down in the side room, who was hugging the quilt and crying secretly, unable to sleep. When he came out and saw the flames coming from the room where Ryu Fujikrai was staying and the intense struggle, Shitsune's pretty face changed immediately, and he was about to shout, but was stopped by Ryu Fujikrai hastily stretched out his hand. Seeing Ryu Fujikrai's pained face and not letting anyone call, Shitsune was also in a state of confusion at the moment, but even so, he gritted his teeth immediately, and hurriedly fetched water from the yard to extinguish the flames on Ryu Fujikrai's floor. Put out. There is a reason why Ryu Fujikrai didn't let Shitsune call someone. If it is said that at the beginning, he also felt that his impulsiveness would ruin himself. When he spewed out the flame later, he clearly felt that the chakra in his body, including his body, began to undergo tremendous changes. The pain is still there, but chakra, whose body is contaminated with this fiery energy, can still be controlled by him, and this control seems to be much sharper than before. Master Longteng, why are you uncomfortable? How about I call someone? Hearing Shitsune's words, Ryu Fujikrai struggled to get up from the ground. His body was hot, and he still couldn't speak, but his eyes were full of joy. Shaking his head, Ryu Fujikrai closed his eyes directly, and started to operate the new chakra operation method that he had researched over the past few days. Advertisement: this is Ryu Fujikrai's combination of the Konoha chakra refining method, the cultivation insights given by Sarutabi Hiruzen, the family inherited samurai cultivation classics, and the operation route obtained from the research of 8 inner gates from Might Dai. After his personal experimentation, he found that it is very suitable for future samurai training, and Ryu Fujikrai plans to use this new chakra operation method as a secret technique in the Dragon Vine Dojo in the near future. With Ryu Fujikrai running and chakra running in the body, Shitsune from the outside can clearly feel that the condition of Ryu Fujikrai is recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. While Shitsune was feeling a little sleepy waiting, the strangeness of Ryu Fujikrai's body finally disappeared. Opening his eyes, looking at Shitsune, who was drowsy but still holding himself up and waiting for him, Ryu Fujikrai silently felt guilty for killing Kato-dan for a second. Okay, Shitsune, I scared you today, so don't hold on here, go and rest. Shitsune stared at the boy in front of him in bewilderment, smiling and touching her head. His little face flushed first, and then he leaned back immediately, avoiding Ryu Fujikrai's head pat. Looking at Ryu Fujikrai, whose clothes were a little scorched at the moment, he asked, are you okay? Ryu Fujikrai shook his head with a smile on his face. My life is left to you, Shitsune. Before you let me die, I don't have the right to kill myself like this. Shitsune pursed his lips, stood up, hummed softly and walked towards his room. When the door was closed, Ryu Fujikrai clearly heard the other party whisper something. I don't understand what you're saying. Advertisement: Ryu Fujikrai shook his head. The despicable means did not bring him the slightest sense of guilt. On the contrary, he discovered the joy of the new world from the savage dragon jade at this moment, which made Ryu Fujikrai directly excited and decided not to go to sleep. After changing his clothes, he came to the empty Dragon Vine Dojo alone. At this moment in the night, in the solemn and elegant dojo training ground, there is no one else except Ryu Fujikrai. Ryu Fujikrai stood in front of a wooden pile for chopping practice, and stood still for 2 seconds. Suddenly, he quickly drew a sword in his hand, and unpretentious sword drawing chop with no special name was cast from his hand. Wow! The bright red firelight was so clear in the dark night, a crescent-shaped flame blade flew out, and while easily cutting the wooden pile in front of it in half, it bombarded a stone platform without weakening. Amidst a burst of heavy bombardment, the smoke and dust dispersed, revealing a hideous knife mark running through the top and bottom. Ryu Fujikrai sucked in a breath, and looked at everything he had caused in shock. The guess in his heart was on the one hand, but the conclusion from the real experiment was on the other hand. Ryu Fujikrai then went through experiments again and again, and finally found that his chakra and body seemed to have obtained the blood succession limit of the fire attribute. In his hands, the usual slashing with a knife can become what it is now, a flame blade that is no less powerful than the great fireball technique. In the night, Ryu Fujikrai murmured in shock. Wouldn't it mean that if I get dragon jades of other attributes in the future, I will be able to get that attribute's ability similar to that of blood successor boundary? Chapter 57 The Dragon Vine Clan that is well known in various countries land of the earth, Iwagakure. Third Sushikijo Nogi looked at the latest information sent back in his hand, and immediately frowned deeply, looking at the ninja who came to report, with an unbelievable expression on his face. Have you read the content on it? The senior intelligence officer who was asked immediately nodded his head. Yes, Master Sushikage, although the above content seems incredible, it is the news that we used our secret knowledge in Konoha to send back. The main reason why Sand Shinobi was counted by Konoha Shinobi is that the so-called new medicine provided by Dragon Vine Pharmaceuticals is too powerful, making the ninjas of the country of Sand misjudge the army of Konoha Shinobi. The combat effectiveness of this is what was plotted against. In addition to passing back this information, our people also inquired about another even more terrifying information. This incident is very likely to affect the overall structure of the ninja world in the future. With that said, the ninja took out another intelligence document and handed it to Onoki. As soon as Onogi took the document, he saw a few large characters specially marked in red on it. The fourth summoning Holy Land, Longming Realm. Onoki frowned even deeper. As a person who had witnessed the true strength of Senju Hashirama, the god of Konoha Shinobi, and Luo Yujibo Madara, Onoki had always had a deep-rooted guard and fear for Konoha village. Whenever there is an opportunity, they always have to compete with Konoha and suppress Konoha's development as much as possible. Advertisement, however, when he looked at the contents of the newspaper, as the pages were turned, his face became more and more gloomy. He didn't want to believe the above content, but the sudden fiasco of Sand Shinobi Village's forces on the Rain Country battlefield forced Onoki to pay more attention to this matter. And when he saw the description of the Longteng family and Longteng Pharmaceuticals products in the information, Onogi's eyes became extremely dangerous. Notify Hands of the Salamander to let their ninjas retreat 50 kilometers from the border of the Land of Rain near my Land of Land, and I, Rock Shinobi Village, agree to a temporary alliance with him. In the Land of Wind, when 3rd Kazekage learned that their Sand Shinobi Village suffered such a sudden loss, the fundamental reason was that it was just a samurai family that had just moved to Konoha from the Iron Country. This strikes 3rd Kazekage as outrageous, if absurd. Samurai. When did a mere samurai family dare to intervene in the battles of my ninja villages? Damn Konoha village, why is it so lucky to be able to pick up such a big deal for nothing? Third Kazekage was so angry that he paced back and forth in the office. Elder Abis and Grandma Kyo, who came over after hearing the news, after seeing the news from Konoha, were also shocked by the content above and gasped. The fourth summoning Holy Land. Is it really that powerful? But aren't the three lands of that old guy Sarutobi Hiruzen all recognized by the summoning Holy Land? Why didn't they show much magic? Is the information about the fourth Holy Land accurate? Third Kazekage glanced at the two of them. Although the existence of Kyo and the two limited him, Kazekige's certain power in a sense, Tsunagakyo is definitely not the time for internal fighting. Third Kazekage had a gloomy face. There is a high probability that the information is true, and it was revealed by Konoha's own people. Hearing this, both of Kyo's faces froze slightly. Very well, this kind of thing of betraying one's own information, put on Konoha's body, this is the will of fire. Advertisement Abis, the old man who has always been aloof from the world and loves fishing the most, opened his half-closed eyes slightly at this moment. Kazekage, if this is the case, we must not give Konoha a chance to breathe. Alliance with Hands of the Salamander. Land of Thunder, Cloud Shinobi Village. Several major ninja villages in the Land of Rain fought life and death, but Cloud Shinobi Village chose to temporarily sit on the sidelines. This group of Cloud Shinobi, who practiced lightning style and ninjutsu quite wildly, did not do things well. Not as rough as imagined. The relevant information about the Longteng family is also placed in front of Third Kazekage at this moment. Not only that, hesitating that the Land of Thunder and the Land of Iron border, not only the information of the Cloud Shinobi spies from Konoha was sent back, but also the information of the Longteng family when they were in the Land of Iron was also sent back. Did the Longteng family get the approval of the summoning world, which is unheard of in the Longming world, after arriving in Konoha village, or, because they were recognized by the Longming world, they chose Konoha? The burly, dark-skinned Third Kazekage, the contemporary Ari of Cloud Shinobi village, was muttering at this moment, and from those eyes full of wisdom, there was no trace of a boorish label. On the side, the future fourth Kazekage, who is now only the son of Kazekage, frowned when he heard Kazekage Ari's words. If it's the former, it can only be attributed to Konoha's good luck. If it's the latter, then the Longteng family chose Konoha instead of coming to Cloud Shinobi village, which is so close to us. This is blatantly looking down on us. Third Kazekage Ari did not speak, and flipped through the information of the Longteng family page by page, and even roughly read the information about the glorious era of the warriors of the Longteng family. After watching it, it was already late at night. Advertisement standing by the window of Kazekage's office, Third Kazekage looked in the direction of Konoha, but frowned. No matter what, such a family with great potential in the future must not fall into the hands of Konoha. Destroy. Or choose me, Cloud Shinobi village. Ryu Fujikrai didn't know it at the moment. While he was still happily thinking about his actual combat method of blood succession limit, the entire ninja world, almost all the high-level officials of the ninja village, had a rare unification of opinion. The Longteng family must not join Konoha. Before the reinforcements from Konoha village to the Land of Rain had yet to set off, Hatake Sakumo, who was on the front line, discovered something was wrong with the situation in the Land of Rain after repeated investigations. After returning to the camp, he immediately told the situation he had investigated. Jiraiya and Orochimaru, who arrived here before the reinforcements from the village, also showed serious expressions when they heard this. It's understandable that the ninjas of the Kingdom of Sand choose to shrink their power. This fellow Hands of the Salamander has also shrunk his power, which is very abnormal. The cause of this war is that he wants to expand the land of rain. Jiraiya murmured incredulously. On the other hand, Orochimaru's dark golden vertical pupil seemed to have seen through everything. In one sentence, the truth of the current situation in the land of rain was revealed. I'm afraid they have already reached a union, and now they are all withdrawing their fists outside, waiting for the next collective swing. As he said that, Orochimaru suddenly turned his head, and said solemnly to the chief strategist Nara at the side. Immediately send a message to the village. The reinforcements had better come early. I'm afraid a new war here will break out early. Chapter 58 The Ninja World War II that reached its climax ahead of time. The Order of the Fire Country Daimyo. Just as Orochimaru expected, while Konoha's village was still making emergency preparations, the forces on the Land of Rain battlefield that had just been strategically contracted gave up their disputes one after another, as if they had been discussed in advance. Instead, on the same day, a fierce attack was launched against Konoha village's power in the Land of Rain. Hands of the Salamander, a Kage-level powerhouse, personally dispatched, with the support of Tsunagakure and Iwagakure's ninja army on the left and right flanks. If it weren't for Konoha's 3 elite Chunin, Orochimaru, Jiraiya, and Hatake Sakumo, the battle situation was stable. What they are facing directly is a series of disastrous collapses and fiascos. However, even if there was no disastrous defeat, when Tsunagakure had destroyed a large amount of power, all the fronts that had been advanced were all beaten back. It seems that they will completely withdraw from the border of the Kingdom of Rain and enter the Kingdom of Fire. Orochimaru and the others also understood that there was no way to retreat. The flames of war must not spread to the territory of the Land of Fire. Konoha Village, Sarutobi Hiruzen has received an emergency call for help from the front line, but even he didn't expect that the situation could be so bad all of a sudden. We can't delay any longer, let the support troops prepare and set off immediately, and must arrive at the front line of the Kingdom of Rain as quickly as possible to stabilize the situation on the battlefield. Sarutobi Hiruzen changed the image of the old man who was depressed in the past, stopped smoking, and gave the order immediately after receiving the emergency call for help from the front line. Advertisement Danza on the side asked pointedly, Hiruzen, what about the delivery of supplies at Longteng? As Hokage, it's not time for you to act yet, and most of the power of Root and Anbu has been sent out. We don't have enough manpower to take charge of this delivery. At present, the major ninja villages are jointly targeting us. It is very likely that they have realized the value of the Longming realm controlled by the Longteng family. At that time, this batch of materials will definitely be intercepted and killed. Hearing this, Sarutobi Hiruzen also frowned slightly. This is indeed a problem. While he was thinking, Danza winked at Mitokado Homura and Utatane Koharu cryptically. Immediately, Mitokado Homura let out a dry cough. I think it's okay for the Longteng family to be responsible for this material delivery. After all, they are part of the village and a warrior family with a century-old heritage. I think there should be no problem with their abilities. Utatane Koharu also nodded. I also think it is feasible. Although the village cannot send a large number of forces to participate in the escort, it is possible to release some smoke bombs to confuse the intercepted enemies. I think that no one would have imagined that the importance of the Longteng family would be so high that we would be able to send them out of the village. Sarutobi Hiruzen frowned suddenly. Ryu Fujikrai looked at Tsunade in front of him, frowning. You mean, our Longteng family will also join in this war with the Land of Rain and other ninja villages? Who does this mean? You know, my Longteng family is a samurai family. According to the laws of the country, it is the order of the Daming Mansion. Tsunade reluctantly handed a scroll to Ryu Fujikrai. Advertisement: this is an order from the Daimyo Mansion. Mr. Sarutabi personally wrote a letter to the Daimyo to come. As for the reason, he said that you should go to support the general's mansion in the Land of Iron. There is a lot of trade between the Land of Iron and the Land of Fire. Contacts. Ryu Fujikrai glanced at the transfer order, and there was no question of authenticity. Seeing Ryu Fujikrai's expression, Tsunade couldn't bear it. The teacher said, "You don't have to go to this matter in person, after all, you are the head of the family, just send some samurai out to carry it out." Ryu Fujikrai glanced at her. Tsunade didn't know what kind of relationship the Ryuto family had with the village at all. They seemed to get along well with each other, and they got along well with the surrounding ninjas. But it is not a strong family after all, and it is not directly governed by Hokage. Ryu Fujikrai could see with his toes what was behind the call. This is the conspiracy. As a samurai family, Ryu Fujikrai cannot refuse the order of the daimyo, so he must send people to carry out this task, and this task will definitely be subject to a lot of overt and secret threats, from ninjas from enemy countries, and even Konoha Laoyin force them to attack. It is not an exaggeration to say that the people sent out have died 10 times and no lives. And if Ryu Fujikrai leaves the village, Konoha can also attack him secretly. To control him is to control the entire Longming realm. As for who will take the blame, Tsunagakyo, Iwagakyo, Cloud Shinobi Village, and even Kirigakyo, who has never participated in the war, can knock on anyone. Snort. Ryu Fujikrai sneered. At this time, Shitsune came in with tea, wearing an off-white kimono, which looked a bit girlish. However, looking at Shitsune, who put down his teacup and went out, Tsunade looked at Ryu Fujikrai in the wrong way. After sensing that Shitsune had left, he lowered his voice and asked solemnly, "Advertisement, what's the matter with Kato-dan?" Ryu Fujikrai raised his eyebrows. "What do you mean? You doubt me?" Tsunade, "You asked him to perform a mission on the first day you met him, but just this mission, he died. Shouldn't I be suspicious?" Ryu Fujikrai looked puzzled, and spread his hands. "Since you think I killed him, why don't you give me a reason? You also said, I just met him for the first time, why did I kill him?" Tsunade's expression froze slightly, staring at Ryu Fujikrai firmly, but there was a faint blush across his face. Staring at Ryu Fujikrai, gritting his teeth. "Don't you kid think I don't know about your nasty thoughts? I'm just another Jiraiya." He, brother Jiraiya." Ryu Fujikrai shook his head with a smile, and moved slightly closer, staring at Tsunade's delicate face. "I will not be brother Jiraiya, because what I want, I will definitely get. You." Tsunade immediately stood up in embarrassment, and pointed at Ryu Fujikrai angrily, but he didn't hold back a word for a long time. Ryu Fujikrai sat up straight, put aside the order in his hand, and said solemnly to Tsunade, "Go back and tell Mr. Sarutabi that since it is the transfer order of the Daming Mansion, my Longteng family will naturally carry it out. After a few days, the supplies will be ready, and I will personally participate in the escort." Chapter 59, Leaving the Village. The back of Ninja Shura. Listening to Tsunade's report, when he heard that Ryu Fujikrai was going to personally participate in the escort, Sarutabi Hiruzen paused slightly with the hand holding the cigarette rod. "Teacher, although Ryu Fujikrai's strength shown in the ninja school is already at the level of Nin, but he is a samurai after all, and it is absolutely extremely dangerous to participate in the ninja war. Before Tsunade finished speaking, Danza on the side snorted coldly. Dangerous. Tsunade, tell me who is not dangerous in the ninja world now? Are the civilians in the land of rain still dangerous? Do they have a choice? The order came from the daimyo's house. Ryu Fujikrai is also a samurai himself, and he should have had the awareness to go to the battlefield long ago. Tsunade was in a hurry, but Sarutabi Hiruzen interrupted her persuasion with a wave of his hand. This time, the village will send several forces, dressed as a transport team, to attract the attention of secret enemies and create opportunities for the people of the Longteng family. This is the limit of what the village can do at present. The order was issued by the Daiming Mansion. What Hokage, there is no power to stop. Coming out of the Hokage building, Danza quickly returned to his route base. After issuing a series of orders, Shimura Dan sat in the dark underground space and let out a long breath. Even if you have a bit of guts and strategy, but with your mere samurai family, you still want to control the treasure land like Longming Realm. When I become a Hokage, Ryu Fujikrai, I will give you a stick of incense. Ryu Fujikrai is the only real member of the Ryuto family. The others are either retainers or vassal families, and they are not qualified to inherit the family after Ryu Fujikrai's death. Advertisement, that is to say, as long as Ryu Fujikrai dies on the battlefield, the summoning scroll in Longming Realm is the property of Konoha village. For this reason, when starting from Ryu Fujikrai, the ninjas hidden in the dark at the route noticed that Ryu Fujikrai and the others did not carry anything that looked like a summoning scroll, and immediately returned to the route base to report to Danza. In this regard, Danza's face immediately revealed an excited killing intent. Ha ha ha, do you think you still have a chance to come back alive? You don't even carry the summoning scroll. Now Ryu Fujikrai, you lowly warriors, really have to die outside. Notify the people in the action team that once the material transportation team of the Longteng family leaves the range of Konoha, they will act immediately. Yes. Lord Danza. Can't you not go? That's a battlefield. At the Konoha gate, Kushina pulled Ryu Fujikrai's arm with red eyes. Behind her, Uchiha Mikoto and Ryu Fujikrai's classmates also came. Narashika frowned. Advertisement, this matter is too strange. The Daiming Mansion has never been in charge of things. Why did the Dragon Teng family suddenly send an order, and they still went to support the Iron Country? No one can figure out this problem, except Ryu Fujikrai himself knows that this is the handwriting of those high-level Konohas. Now the major ninja villages that used to fight to death in the Land of Rain have been attacking Konoha all the time. How can the Land of Iron, a samurai country that was surviving under the attack of Hands of the Salamander? Maybe at this time, I will take the initiative to jump out and look for support. The right answer is to withdraw from the war as soon as possible. Smiling, he touched Kushina's small head and stroked the other's smooth long red hair. Ryu Fujikrai said solemnly. Don't worry, don't forget my great ambition, because when I didn't lead the warriors to the top of the world, how could I die outside so easily? Kushina's tears rolled down. Ryu Fujikrai could feel the other party's strong uneasiness, touched it from his arms, and took out a shiny diamond while Uchiha Mikoto and others gasped in surprise. The plump crystal pendant. Under the fiery gaze of a group of female students, it was gently worn on Kushina's neck. Hey, Uzumaki Kushina, we can make a deal now. You are the future lady of the Ryuto family that I, Ryu Fujikrai, planned. I will finish the mission safely and come back from the battlefield, and you, too, will be healthy. Meet me at the gate of Konoha. It's a deal. Lady Hokage-sama. Advertisement. Kushina smiled through tears, but blushed and touched the crystal pendant on her neck, with tears in her eyes, but also stretched out a hand, and pulled a hook with Ryu Fujikrai. It's a deal, if you don't come back. I'll never forgive you. Never. Ryu Fujikrai nodded solemnly, and the sad words came to an end. Ryu Fujikrai took a deep breath, glanced at Namikaze Minato and others, nodded, and then walked towards the direction of his family's samurai team going out this time. Behind them, Namikaze Minato and the others clenched their fists as they looked at Ryu Fujikrai, who was wearing scarlet samurai armor in the style of the Sengoku period, with a sword at his waist, and who was going away with his back to them. Uchiha Mikoto also stepped forward to hug Kushina, who was sobbing softly, while comforting him, but stared at Ryu Fujikrai's back without blinking. He was obviously only a young man who was as old as them, but at this moment he had put on his armor, and as the head of the clan, he was shouldering the dream of reviving the warriors and going to the hellish battlefield on Earth. For some reason, in the eyes of Uchiha Mikoto, Ryu Fujikrai's thin back at this moment has a sense of majesty and heroism. It's like the ancestor of their family in the Valley of the End, Ninja Zyuluo Ujibo Madara. It is full of heroic wildness that knows what can't be done. If it is him, he will definitely be able to come back, he will definitely be able to. Chapter 60. The Flaming Sword Gang, Sacrificial Sword Soul. Glancing at Konoha village behind him, Ryu Fujikrai's eyes flickered with coldness. To become the magistrate of Goose City needs both force and profit, not to mention the most powerful Konoha village in the ninja world. Cutting meat to feed wolves can only keep hungry wolves from coveting him in the short term, but if he doesn't have his own strength, he will die after all. But this time when leaving the village, Ryu Fujikrai and the others will face such a serious problem. Master Patriarch, will Konoha village really attack us this time? Aren't you a disciple of Third Hokage? Ryu Fujikrai was beside Ryu Fujikrai, carrying the scroll with sealed medicinal honey provided by Hokage on his back. Ryuto Yuta thought of himself etc. was called up by Ryu Fujikrai last night to speak out. So far, except for Konoha village, they all look unbelievable. In fact, it wasn't just him, even Yoshio Otsuka and the others beside him had unbelievable expressions on their faces. Konoha village, would they actually attack them? How can they say that their Dragon Teng family is also a noble family of Konoha now, right? Ryu Fujikrai snorted coldly as he ran quickly towards the country of rain. Hokage disciple, a disciple who has only been a teacher for half a year is not born in Konoha, so why is third generation reluctant? As for our properties, Ryu Fujikrai's cold voice reached the ears of the family warriors who followed behind him, making everyone's hearts icy cold. It seems that they have reacquainted with the Konoha village where they have lived for half a year. Those of us, especially after I die, they can justifiably take our property as their own. As for those ninjas who participated in the shares, my classmates may be sad for my death, but they don't. This cannot be stopped. Hokage only needs to take out 40% of the share that originally belonged to our Dragon Vine, and do a good job of sharing the benefits. After many years, who still knows the existence of the Dragon Vine family? Amidst the dense footsteps, Ryu Fujikrai led a total of 150 elite warriors running wildly in the forest for this mission. Unlike ninjas, who run with their arms facing backwards, which Ryu Fujikrai doesn't understand, Ryu Fujikrai and the samurai run in a much more normal way. Everyone that can be brought out by Ryu Fujikrai has undoubtedly been carefully selected. After half a year of herbivorous dragon meat and other Longming world ingredients, it is equipped with a dragon skin armor specially made by the family. Even the samurai swords in their hands are all high-quality products made of special ores in ancient tree forests. Although he does not have the strange abilities of well-known ninja swords in the ninja world, Ryu Fujikrai dare say that he is not inferior to those famous ninja swords in terms of chakra transmission and sharpness and tenacity. Knowing for a long time that such a day will come to 477, Ryu Fujikrai never relaxes, and the training of the samurai of the Ryuto family has never stopped. Each of the samurai brought out behind Ryu Fujikrai this time is the existence of the seal of eradicating evil with his tongue. This technique itself is very private, similar to a combination lock with a random password. Even if it is obtained from the root of Konoha, Ryu Fujikrai is not too worried about using it. Next on our journey, we will not only fight against the Konoha shinobi who has hidden their identity, but also the ninjas of other ninja villages. It can be said that our enemies are all ninjas. Have you ever been timid? Ryu Fujikrai asked. Beside Ryuto, Yuta immediately answered without hesitation. It is our honor that the patriarch wants to lead us warriors to become the strongest in the world. For the sake of the patriarch, for the glory of the family and the warriors, we are willing to die. After finishing speaking, the warriors behind him were either the warriors of the Dragon Teng family itself, or the warriors from the three vassal families including Shuman. Each of them shouted loudly without hesitation. We are willing to die. On the side, Otsuka Yoshio also looked determined, his eyes full of fighting spirit. Fight against all ninjas. Such crazy actions, even if you die, will definitely be remembered by warriors all over the world. I can't wait to let those bastards taste my blade. Ryu Fujikrai showed satisfaction on his face, and the military spirit is available. That's it. From this battle, let the world face up to the power of our warriors again. Let's attack with all members. Those who stand in the way will die, yes. Advertisement. On the second day after starting from Konoha village, Ryu Fujikrai and the others were rushing at full speed, and it seemed that in about half a day, they would arrive at the border of the Land of Fire. In a wild mountain, in the forest at dusk, it was already very dark. The sound of treading footsteps is so clear in the forest, one after another wearing armor, as if a group of warriors from hundreds of years ago, are quickly shuttling through the forest. Their speed is very fast, and the wind caused by the running has a sharp sound. However, when the team was running with all its strength, the thin warrior at the head suddenly raised an arm, and the whole person stopped immediately. There is an ambush. Be careful. As soon as Ryu Fujikrai's voice fell, a series of piercing sounds suddenly flew out from the darkness in front of him, densely packed. The vaguely reflected metal light made all the warriors of the Longteng family aware of it immediately. Beware of kunai. Ninja attack. Dang dang dang. In the darkness, bifp, the flying kunai collided with the samurai sword precisely. These Dragon Vine family warriors with a lot of actual combat experience almost reacted instinctively. On the spot, they and their nearest companions formed a formation. At the same time, the samurai sword in his hand seemed to have eyes, and in the darkness, he accurately knocked away every kunai that flew towards him. The sudden faint strange sound made the face of the leader Ryu Fujikrai change. Careful! Detonators! As he said that, suddenly, under the unbelievable gaze of everyone, a majestic flame erupted from his whole body, and the icy short sword in his hand quickly cut out several flame-flying blades. Boom! The flames destroyed the kunai with the detonating talisman on it, and at the same time ignited the surrounding trees. In the raging flames, the figures standing on the treetops made Ryu Fujikrai narrow his eyes. The number is about 30 or 40. 30 or 40 ninjas dare to stop them and 150 samurai. The status of samurai in today's ninja world can be imagined. Cloud Shinobi. I saw that the leader of a ninja with a Chunin aura on his forehead was the forehead protector of Cloud Shinobi village. Oh! To be able to release such a fire-style attack, ninjutsu. Forget it, it doesn't matter, you are members of the Dragon Vine family, right? Hand over the summoning scroll, and I can let you go. Ryu Fujikai sneered, the scroll is in Konoha. The Chunin shook his head suddenly, with some regret in his tone. Then you are useless, kill them. As soon as the words fell, figures suddenly jumped down from the treetops, facing Ryu Fujikai and the other warriors, forming seals quickly in midair. Water style times water shock wave. Lightning style false darkness. Lightning style. Walk. Above the head, in the fierce ninjutsu light, the ferocious expressions of these Cloud Shinobi were clearly reflected, but at the next moment, the warriors of the Longteng family who were surrounded by them suddenly burst into the air. Suddenly disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. Damn ninja, eat your uncle and I'll kill you. Dragon Vine flow times mountaineering goat. Yoshio Otsuka's roar suddenly sounded beside a Cloud Shinobi Chunin, holding Vice Admiral's nearly 2-meter-long samurai sword with a sharp chakra light, and before the latter had time to react, he pierced his ears instantly. Dragon Vine flow times farewell pine. When Ryuto Yuta's icy voice appeared, a ninja who was releasing lightning style had already cut off his head with a sudden blow. The sword was drawn too fast, and the companion beside Cloud Shinobi was unable to react until the long knife in Ryuto Yuta's hand continued to stab towards his heart. Pfft! Blood surged, and the sound of fighting unfolded instantly in the woods under the reflection of the flames. Advertisement: Cloud Shinobi village Chunin, who had been sure of winning before, suddenly turned pale. Body flicker technique. No, you don't have flicker at all. Seeing that the sneak attack failed and he was F***KED instead, and the subordinates who were completely suppressed by the warriors of the Longteng family at the beginning of the battle, the ninja's expression was completely unbelievable. Should I really be distracted at this time? The voice of Ryu Fujikai came along with a scorching sword attack, making this Chunin almost instinctively use the body replacement technique to evade. Looking at the wooden stake that had turned into ashes, he looked at the thin figure who had stood on the top of a tree at some point, facing him, with the short sword in his hand still burning with raging flames. The Chunin gritted his teeth. Impossible, samurai, how could a samurai have such power? You. Suddenly, as if thinking of something, the Chunin's eyes widened. Have you awakened the blood successor boundary? However, Ryu Fujikai didn't intend to talk too much nonsense with the other party at all. From the moment the Ryuto family walked out of Konoha this time, it was equivalent to entering hell with 10 feet. And in hell, the only thing that can be reasonable is the steel knife in their hands. You at the Chunin level, as the subject of my next trick, are considered qualified. Ryu Fujikai's voice was cold, with the short sword in his hand across his chest, and the other hand resting lightly on the sword, as if the flames couldn't hurt him at all. In the flames, a pair of eyes full of predator colors stared at Cloud Shinobi, who had also drawn his ninja sword in front of him. Take a deep breath. Breath of fire times 1 shape Shiranue. Swish. Ryu Fujikai's body suddenly disappeared in front of Chunin, causing the latter to almost instinctively turn to the side, but in the blink of an eye, Ryu Fujikai had already come to the other side. The short sword wrapped in the scorching flame slashed at the opponent's neck, but the opponent escaped by luck. However, although the head was not lost, one arm was unfortunately cut off by Long Ling Xiao. Ah! Under the reflection of the flames, the arm sprinkled blood from the treetops and fell towards the tragic battlefield below. Jnin's screams startled some of the Cloud Shinobi team. Long Teng Yuta slashed at Jnin in front of him one after another. Although the rapid attack was blocked by the opponent's weapon, the opponent had no time to rescue him. "You are still distracted from fighting me, how much do you ninjas look down on us, Takeda?" As Long Teng Yuta said, the speed and strength of the samurai sword in his hand suddenly increased sharply. Dragon vine stream times cliff. This knife seemed to split the mountain into a cliff, and it didn't give this Cloud Shinobi Jnin a chance to perform ninjutsu. The moment the weapon shattered in the opponent's hand, the whole person was chopped into two pieces by Ryuta Yuta. In this scene, several young Cloud Shinobi led by this Jnin were also startled that their hands and feet went limp. When they looked around, they were suddenly shocked to find out. In just such a short time, I thought a very easy task turned out to be their burial place directly. Pfft! The sound of friction between the blade and the bones of the corpse is creepy in the dark night. However, these warriors of the Longteng family excitedly enjoyed the rare wind. Once upon a time, these warriors could deal with these pretentious ninjas like chopping melons and vegetables. When a famous ninja fell to the ground either because of lack of strength or because he despised the samurai, when Ryu Fujikai appeared in front of the crowd with the scorched black head of the previous leader before. Advertisement: the battle in the forest here is over. How is it possible? Chiyu, Akiyama Jnin is about to be promoted to elite Jnin. A Cloud Shinobi village Jnin was kneeling on the ground, murmuring in fear and disbelief, and the head that Ryu Fujikai threw on the ground was exactly the Akiyama Jnin he was talking about. Ryu Fujikai raised his eyebrows. Elite Jnin. It's a pity that he didn't have time to display his full strength. Saying that, he waved his hand to Long Kyo Yutai, who was at the side. There's no need to keep him for interrogation. We came out this time, obviously to carry out the support mission of the Daming Mansion, but in fact, we are here to kill people. As many as you come, as many as you kill. Ryuto Yuta nodded respectfully. This Cloud Shinobi and everyone finally realized something, and shouted hastily. "No, you can't kill me. Do you know how many people I sent from Cloud Shinobi village to kill you this time? I have a price." Before Cloud Shinobi Jnin finished speaking, his head had already rolled several times on the ground. Yoshio Otsuka finally couldn't bear it at this moment, excitedly moved to Ryu Fujikai's side. "Master Patriarch, is the fire-style power you just displayed the blood succession limit that ninjas talk about?" A blood-stained dragon vine warrior walked over, and everyone's faces were full of curiosity. At the moment when the flame burst out from Ryu Fujikai's body just now, everyone could clearly perceive that the aura on Ryu Fujikai's body was as stable as Jnin's. Ryu Fujikai smiled slightly and shook his head. "This is not the limit of blood succession." He stretched out a hand while speaking, and a flame rose instantly from the hand. "This power comes from the Longming realm." As soon as this remark came out, even the samurai who were used to seeing miracles on Ryu Fujikai gasped in shock, and Ryuto Yuta couldn't hold back his expression. "My lord, what do you mean?" Ryu Fujikai nodded. "Good luck in the future, you can also get such power." Immediately, the eyes of all the warriors of the Longteng family at the scene could no longer be described as fiery. They all clenched the hilts of their katanas at their waists, their eyes scarlet, looking frantically at the flame in Ryu Fujikai's hand. This kind of power, even a ninja would find it hard to refuse, but the patriarch said that they can also have it. At this moment, everyone couldn't help but lick the corners of their mouths excitedly. Ryu Fujikrai saw everyone's reaction in his eyes. These people would not betray him, and now is the time to completely it fully inspired their ferocity as warriors. What I have right now is the power that even ninjas would envy. As long as we can get down from the battlefield alive this time, and truly stand up in Konoha, no one in the family will dare to mess with it. All of you will have the opportunity to have it. Great strength, great wealth and power, and the glory of warriors will truly belong to us. When Ryu Fujikrai's words were spoken, the encouragement to everyone's morale at this moment was something that even Ryu Fujikrai himself did not expect next. Pai looked at Cloud Shinobi-Knin's head, and some lied. Ryu Fujikrai was quick, but still gave away their position. Along with Ryu Fujikrai and his team, they slaughtered wildly all the way, not to mention Cloud Shinobi, even the teams of Rock Shinobi and Sand Shinobi who came after hearing the news were terrified by the battle traces along the way. The body trembled. Tragic. No, this word is no longer enough to describe everything they saw. Along the way, wherever fighting broke out, by the time they passed, there would be corpses already lying on the ground. That's right, it's just dismembered corpses, as if it was done on purpose. All corpses always have some parts left from the body and thrown on the ground at will. Blood was everywhere. Impossible, how is it possible? Those warriors, along the way, have recognized more than a dozen genin from the corpses. Can they have such strength?